The old thrift shop on Main Street had always been a curiosity for locals. Its shelves brimmed with forgotten trinkets, dusty books, and peculiar objects. Among them was a small porcelain doll encased in a cracked glass box. Her face was eerily delicate, with painted blue eyes that seemed to follow anyone who passed by. A sign beneath her read, $10. Do not open the case. Rachel, a young woman new to the town, had never been one to believe in superstitions. She was furnishing her new apartment and decided to stop by the shop. Her eyes caught the doll, and despite the ominous warning, something about it fascinated her. "Why is the case sealed?" Rachel asked the shopkeeper, a wiry old man with nervous demeanor. He hesitated, his gaze darting to the doll. "It's not just for show. The doll is strange. Anyone who's taken her out of that box has regretted it." Rachel chuckled uneasily. "You're just trying to scare me. I'll take it." The man shook his head vehemently. "Keep her in the box. Promise me." She nodded, though she wasn't entirely serious. After all, what harm could a doll do? Back at her apartment, Rachel placed the doll on a shelf in her living room. Its painted blue eyes gleamed in the dim light. Curiosity gnawed at her, and against her better judgment, she opened the glass case. The air seemed to shift, becoming heavier. A faint, sweet scent of roses filled the room, quickly souring to the stench of decay. That night, Rachel's dreams were vivid and unsettling. She saw the doll standing at the foot of her bed, her painted eyes now vivid and lifelike. A child's voice, soft and menacing, echoed in her mind. "Play with me." When she woke, she dismissed the dream as her imagination. But as day passed, odd things began to happen. The doll's position would change slightly when Rachel wasn't looking. Objects in her apartment moved or went missing, only to reappear in places she hadn't left them. Lights flickered, and whispers filled the air when she was alone. Not playful whispers, but guttural, sinister murmurs. The tension in Rachel's apartment grew unbearable. Her phone would ring late at night, and when she answered, she'd hear faint breathing and a soft, distant giggle before the line went dead. Her dreams became increasingly vivid, blending with reality. She once woke to find her bedroom door wide open, though she distinctly remembered locking it. One evening, Rachel returned from work to find the doll sitting on her kitchen counter, though she swore she'd left it on the shelf. A piece of paper lay beside it with the words, "Thank you for freeing me," scrawled in shaky, childlike writing. Fear gripped her, but she tried to rationalize it. Perhaps someone had broken in. She called the locksmith and had her locks changed. That night, she locked the doll back in the case and placed it in her closet. But the disturbances didn't stop. Rachel began hearing laughter, soft, girlish giggles that turned into low, mocking chuckles echoing through the apartment. Her reflection in the mirror seemed delayed, her own movements lagging behind as if mocking her. The whispers grew louder, the voice pleading, "Play with me, or else." Desperate, Rachel returned to the thrift shop. The shopkeeper's face paled when she recounted her experiences. You you opened the case, didn't you?" "I didn't think it would matter," she cried. "It matters," he said gravely. "The doll, she's bound to the case. It keeps her from latching onto anyone. Now that you've freed her, she's chosen you." "How do I stop this?" Rachel begged. The shopkeeper shook his head, his voice a trembling whisper. "You can't. You can only appease her, but it's never enough." Rachel returned home, her heart heavy. She tried to interact with the doll, speaking to it, even setting it at her dinner table. But nothing appeased the malevolent spirit. The disturbances escalated. Shadows darted in her peripheral vision, and the air in her apartment grew icy. The scent of decay lingered, making her gag. She began to wither, plagued by sleepless nights and an unshakable sense of dread. One particularly cold evening, Rachel resolved to rid herself of the doll entirely. She drove to a secluded spot by the river, clutching the glass case tightly. As she prepared to toss the doll into the water, the wind picked up, carrying with a faint, familiar giggle. Her hands trembled as the doll's painted eyes seemed to come alive, glinting in the moonlight. "Don't leave me," the voice whispered, faint but clear. Rachel's chest tightened, her breath hitching. She hurled the doll into the river, watching as the current carried it away. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. The sound of the music box began to play in her car, its haunting melody piercing the silence. She spun around, heart racing, but the backseat was empty. Back at her apartment, Rachel's hope for peace was dashed. The doll was there, sitting on her coffee table, water dripping from its porcelain body. A puddle had formed beneath it, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. Beside the doll was another note. "You can't leave me." Her mind spiraled into panic. She called a priest, explaining her ordeal. The priest arrived, a stoic man with years of experience dealing with the unexplainable. He examined the doll, muttering prayers under his breath. As he attempted to bless the doll, a sharp, piercing scream erupted from it, shaking the walls. The priest recoiled, clutching his rosary. "This is no ordinary curse," he said, his face pale. "Whatever binds this doll is ancient and powerful. You must find its origin and break the curse." Rachel began researching obsessively, uncovering fragments of the doll's dark history. It had belonged to a young girl named Eliza in the late 1800s. Eliza's life was marred by tragedy, neglect, abuse, and an untimely death. The doll had been her only companion. It was said that her spirit latched onto it, seeking solace and revenge. Determined, Rachel tracked down the remnants of Eliza's estate, now a crumbling mansion on the outskirts of the town. Inside, the air was damp, and the walls were adorned with faded portraits. In the attic, Rachel found a journal, Eliza's diary. The entries spoke of loneliness and desperation, culminating in a chilling declaration. If I can't live, I'll make sure they never forget me. Rachel placed the doll in the center of the attic, surrounding it with candles. She read aloud from the diary, her voice trembling. Eliza, I'm sorry for your pain. I release you. Please find peace. For a moment, the room was silent. Then, a gust of wind extinguished the candles, and the attic filled with Eliza's voice. You think it's that easy? The doll's eyes glowed, and the room shook violently. Rachel fled, leaving the doll behind. Back at her apartment, Rachel hoped she was free, but the next morning, the doll was there, sitting on her bed. Its one porcelain face was cracked. Its eyes were dark, lifeless pits, and a new note lay beside it. Forever friends. Her scream died in her throat as the room plunged into darkness. The sound of a music box began to play, a haunting melody that sent shivers down her spine. She felt her body freeze, paralyzed by an unseen force. The doll's tiny hand moved, brushing her cheek. You'll never leave me, it whispered. The next morning, Rachel was gone. Her apartment was silent, save for the soft giggling of a child. Days later, a new tenant moved in, discovering a beautiful porcelain doll encased in a pristine glass box on the shelf. Beneath it was a sign, $10. Do not open the case.